I love reading history. I have always had a passion to read history, and one of those types of books that I like to read are books that give a large, sweeping history because it gives me a platform in which to investigate some of those smaller mentioned topics. Let me give you some examples. I got four of them here, and I'll kind of go through them kind of rapid fire. I have this one here, Indigenous Continent. I learned a lot about the Native Americans. I learned a lot about the Romans in SPQR. And I learned a lot about the Vikings and the children of Ash and Elm. And finally, I learned a lot about the ancient Egyptians in this book here. And so those are the type of books that I like to read. And so I bought some books that inspired me to learn a little bit more about some of these smaller mentioned topics in a book that I just finished reading for our Double Shots at Historic Plots book club, and it is Cuba. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about some of these things that were mentioned in here. Some of them were in more detail, and some of them were not. And so I wanted to dive into that. And so the first book I bought was this one here, A New World Begins. This was about the French Revolution. And so you're probably saying, why would you read about the French Revolution and Cuba? Because I felt like I needed to know a little bit more about the French Revolution in order to understand the Haitian Revolution of 1791. And this one is mentioned in our book. And finally, the other book that I felt like I need to dive in a little bit more about, and it's obviously when you read about Cuba, you want to know more about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and so I got The Abyss. This one is by Max Hastings, and this one is a deep dive into the Cuban Missile Crisis. And finally, and I'll probably do a video on this by itself, but our book club chose our next month's read, which is a great book. I'm excited to read this one. And it is called Spice, the 16th Century Contest That Shaped the Modern World by Roger Crowley. If you've read any of his books, they're fantastic. He's a great storyteller. He doesn't leave any stone unturned when it comes to the topic he's investigating and he's sharing. So can't wait to read this one for the month of April in our Double Shots in Historic Plots book club. If you're interested in joining us, the link is in the bio. And to end this, I wanted to ask you, what book have you read, or books that you've read, that inspired you to do a deep dive into a topic that was mentioned in that book? Let me know down in the comments.